My name is Clare. I'm co-founder of Department 22, a creative consultancy with expertise in the circular economy. We work in the food sector because amongst all industries, the food industry is probably the most environmentally damaging of all. All the way from production to storage, transportation, retail, consumption and waste, it's a fossil fuel guzzling intensive system that emits carbon, rips up soil, pollutes waterways and destroys biodiversity. At Department 22, we envisage a future where all food is produced using regenerative agriculture, a system that enhances the natural fertility of the soil and enables wildlife to flourish. We want to help businesses offer their customers new circular ways of buying and consuming food and leaving no waste. This means not only new technologies, but above all, changing consumer behaviour and educating our clients to help them perceive the benefits of change. We three founding partners all came from the Royal College of Art, and design is our superpower. Design can often be associated with aesthetically pleasing stuff, things like expensive furniture and fancy things for your home, but actually design is a remarkable problem-solving, people-centred discipline that provides many of the techniques that help us make change happen. I'll explain some of these that we use routinely in our work with businesses. Number one, people can't necessarily imagine what they can't see. So design is really good at painting a picture that helps people understand how things could be different. Sci-fi films often show us visions of a disastrous and terrifying future. We use similar tools like storyboards, images, animations and films to describe new positive visual narratives of how the world could work differently, more beautiful, easier to use and more fun to engage with. Last year, for example, we created a report for Sainsbury's about the future of food that looked at latest trends and scientific innovations in the sector, describing how the lives of people and their relationship with food and eating might change as a result in various future times, from 2025 all the way through to 2169. Number two, design is a visual tool that makes it possible to see the world from different perspectives. We use zoomed out macro perspectives to see entire systems, learning about how they work and seeing the relationships between parts of that system that may not have otherwise been apparent. We map them out visually and we redraw them in a new way. Then we create zoomed in views, looking at individual people and creating visual profiles to get insights about their needs, their desires and their aspirations. We recently worked with quite a high-end takeaway restaurant in central London who wanted to improve their environmental impact. By mapping out their current packaging use, all its components and their quantities, where it comes from and where it mostly ends up in the context of that restaurant, as well as chatting to a number of customers, we were able to create a number of options that would allow customers to receive their food in reusable containers, a system that has the added benefit of encouraging customers to return to the restaurant. Number three, design is a sort of advanced planning tool without the boringness. We can quite easily build mock-ups of ideas to quickly and cheaply test how things might work, trying things out with real people to see what works best. Testing can also be about a product or the experience that a person has when engaging with a given service offer. So we do both of these things. For example, we're working with a Rebel supermarket in Brighton, designing better ways for customers to refill their own containers with liquid products like shampoo. It turns out that while refilling stations like these are becoming more commonplace, they're actually really hard for customers to use, and they also pose some considerable challenges for staff. The types of work we do to move towards the circular economy can be vastly variable, but whether it's about investigating people's attitudes to salmon farming, redesigning poultry production to be more sustainable, implementing microanaerobic digestion in cities, or setting up local food waste composting systems, people are always at the heart of our process. What are we trying to do now, and how has our life changed due to COVID-19? Good question. Our life has completely changed through the crisis, but it's been fascinating for us because COVID is linked to food in so many ways. To begin with, it all started, so it seems, in a food market. Then skip forward a couple of months and we see the almost immediate impact the virus had on our fragile food systems as worried citizens stockpiled. According to the BBC, by the end of April this year, UK citizens had an extra £1 billion worth of shopping in their cupboards. This fear of food shortages affected policies of entire countries. Kazakhstan and Vietnam, amongst the biggest exporters of wheat and rice respectively, blocked their exports, causing shortages across the world. For the first time, popping to the shops became a thing of the past, with huge queues outside all supermarkets, and high demand for online deliveries meant you could be waiting for 6 weeks for your next order of food to arrive. As the death rate soared, it became ever more apparent that those with unhealthy diets or suffering from obesity were more vulnerable to the effects of the virus. And then, through a long period of lockdown, with restaurants closed, people in the UK started cooking more and becoming more and more connected and more interested in their food and where it came from. People started delivering food to other people in need or organising meals at scale for their communities. We began thinking about how this new community spirit and interest in food might be an opportunity to change buying habits. We assembled a small group of people, and through some in-depth conversations with them, it became clear that people really would prefer to eat more healthy food and sustainable food. But there were two main barriers. The first is where to find it. In the UK, getting sustainable food often means taking an outing to a farmer's market or to a specialised whole food shop. The second barrier is price. What's perceived to be sustainable food is almost always more costly. Having worked for 10 years in the food sector, we know a lot about how bad food can be. It's responsible for a third of all greenhouse gas emissions. We waste 30% of all food produced. 67% of all food is sold through 4 major high street retailers. Our life has completely changed through the crisis, but it's been fascinating for us because COVID is linked to food in so many ways. To begin with, it all started, or so it seems, in a food market. Then skip forward a couple of months and we see the almost immediate impact the virus had on our fragile food systems as worried citizens stockpiled. According to the BBC, by the end of April, UK citizens had an extra £1 billion worth of shopping in their cupboards. This fear of food shortages affected policies of whole countries. Kazakhstan and Vietnam, amongst the biggest exporters of wheat and rice respectively, blocked their exports, causing shortages across the world. For the first time, popping to the shops became a thing of the past, with huge queues outside all supermarkets, and high demand for online deliveries meant you could be waiting 6 weeks for your next order of food to arrive. As the death rate soared, it became ever more apparent that those with unhealthy diets or suffering from obesity were more vulnerable to the effects of the virus. And then, through a long period of lockdown with restaurants closed, people in the UK started cooking more and becoming more connected and interested in their food. People started delivering food to other people in need or organising meals at scale for their communities. We began thinking about how this new community spirit and interest in food might be an opportunity to change buying habits. We assembled a small group of people, and through some in-depth conversations with them, it became clear that people really would prefer to eat healthy, sustainable food. But we discovered two main barriers. The first is where to find it. Getting sustainable food often means an outing to a farmer's market or to a specialised whole food shop. The second barrier is price. What is perceived to be sustainable food is almost always more costly. Having worked for 10 years in the food sector, we know a lot about how bad food can be. It's responsible for a third of all greenhouse gas emissions. We waste 30% of all food produced. 67% of food is sold through just 4 major high street retailers. Basically, the way we produce food is destroying the soil and playing havoc with the natural world. It's all about maximising efficiency and lowering price at the expense of quality. The way we access food has also changed. COVID saw online food sales almost double in the UK between March and July, and this is set to grow. 40% of food shopping is now predicted to be done online by 2030. But at the same time, the experience of shopping has become anonymous, impersonal. So working with people, we found a new appetite for community spirit. We wondered if we could build on this to bring people together to bulk buy better food at reasonable prices. Customers are loving meeting new neighbours and appreciating the difference between our food and what they normally can get from the supermarket. The results have been really exciting, and we're currently developing technology to scale up our efforts. The role of the individual in bringing about an ecological transition is an interesting debate, because while it's true that we can all do a lot to make a difference, this has shifted the focus away from the real culprits, big businesses, and this has been subtly but systematically manipulated, shifting the blame to consumers. Over time, for example, Americans have come to feel a sense of responsibility for the waste that is generated, stimulated by the creation of America Recycles Day in 1997, a campaign that encourages Americans to recycle more. But look behind the scenes and you'll find it's the brainchild of a not-for-profit organisation called Keep America Beautiful, founded and backed by large companies that produce vast quantities of plastic products that end up as pollution. Waste therefore becomes the fault of the people, letting big corporations off the hook and taking the focus off the really big industries that are driving environmental damage. These are the ones that should be making the biggest changes. So of course there are lots of things you can do and none of them are bad, but I think one of the most impactful things you can do is to support organisations that put pressure on businesses or governments to change their ways. There are many of these and they need your voice. And this is actually more useful than, say, doing your recycling, which just perpetuates, effectively, a linear economic system. Here are my other top tips. Change your bank. Many traditional high street banks have links with highly questionable activities such as arms trades, speculation on food prices, oil and gas and tar sands mining. So put your money into banks like Triodos or Charity Bank, whose business models are guided by strong ethical frameworks and can wield an enormous amount of power to make transition happen. Change your energy supplier. Most energy suppliers make strong sustainability claims, but some tick that box through offsetting. Choose a supplier that offers 100% renewable electricity and 100% renewable gas. The way you get around matters, so walk or cycle as much as you can, maybe invest in an electric bicycle if you can. It really takes the pain out of hills and it's a lot of fun. And definitely don't fly unless you really have to. There are some great sites that can help you use the train instead, such as raileurope.com. And of course, the most important one for us, think about what you eat. Remember, it's not just what you eat, it's the quality of what you eat that counts. If you eat meat, eat it less, or eat meat that has only been pasture-fed, or just give it up altogether, better still. Buy organic, buy from your local farmer, join a community-supported agriculture group. If everyone made just some of these changes, it would make a big difference. We've reached an absurd level of waste in our society, entirely driven by price and convenience. But we're really not paying the true price of that convenience. Our current economic model is depleting the earth of its finite resources and at the same time discarding those resources in a way that makes them impossible to recover at an unprecedented rate. Many materials that we use in the production of everyday products are now at risk of extinction, and some of these are absolutely critical for the production of electronic equipment, as well as the very objects we will need to wean us off our dependency on fossil fuels. Antimony, for example, is used in the production of batteries, and indium is used to make solar panels, both in short supply. And then there's a whole string of other rare earth metals, cerium, gadolinium, neodymium, just to name a few, that wind turbines need in order to operate successfully. In the same way, our industrial agricultural systems are entirely dependent on the use of finite fertilisers like phosphorus, while millions of tonnes of nutrients are wasted in the form of sewage and food waste. And all this is really a design problem because actually we still have plenty of those materials on the planet, but we just haven't designed them beyond the moment of consumption. Few designers find themselves in front of a brief that asks them to consider how those resources can end up back in the right place, to be recovered and reused, rather than to be lost forever in landfill. It's a simple ask, but a complex task. But this is the only way forward for the future, and design is absolutely critical to make it work. Not only do we need to redesign our products and infrastructure, we also need to redesign services and the human behaviour they require, because we need to know exactly what to do with the things we use in our everyday lives when we no longer want them. So my heroes are people who have articulated new economic models that have the power to change the world. Walter Starhill is one of the founding pioneers of the notion of a circular economy. Michael Braungart made it accessible, and Dame Ellen MacArthur is making it happen. Sadly, I never got to meet Victor Papanek, who quite accurately described design as one of the most damaging professions in the world, encouraging people to buy things they don't need with money they don't have to impress people who don't care. He was perhaps the first to understand that used in a different way, design could be a force for good. His work inspired me and changed the course of my professional life, from designing products to designing services, and to demonstrating how design could be used to create sustainable businesses that can make the world a better place. This path also led me to training many other designers to think differently, and my years running Sustain RCA at the Royal College of Art gave me the opportunity to work with many amazing people with world-changing ideas. Many of those are out there now, making the world a better place, piece by piece. Thank you.